Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about aspects of Yedo 9. So this is our final Yedo form, right? So it's only 9, right? So as opposed to like 13, it seems to be going down with each kind of round. Although each form seems to be a little bit longer. So this is our ultimate, literally, our ultimate Yedo form. So there's got to be like a lot of good stuff to play with, right? And there is, right? So because it's such a long form, there's going to be so much stuff we can talk about. I'm just going to choose 3 to kind of play with. So actually at this point, also note that I did make a video on one of the techniques in this one already, and that was the double thrust. Again, if you want, again, just a brief reminder, right? So you're going to thrust, step through, thrust, and you have that spin through, right? The idea being I thrust in, and as I pass through you, I'm going to push it in even further. But again, I have another video there, so if you want to take a look at that, you can also take a look at that. But we're going to talk about 3 newer ideas. The first move is literally, some of you have learned with a twist. Right, so we're going to take more or less what we did in Sangsu 9, right, and twist it up, right? So again, add a little bit of a twist, turn it on an angle. So if you take a look, we just struck with our diving cut. We're going to step back and do a nice big clearing motion. So notice it's not a simple cross cut that we've seen in our previous ones, right? And it's also not the same thing that we've seen in Yedo 5. So this is a new-ish idea, right? So in Sangsu 9, the idea of that is simply, again, Sangsu 9 modified in Yedo 9. I like that similarity. This is just clear your space, right? But again, just kind of that one-dimensional kind of clear, because again, crosscuts are hard to block. They're nice, clear motions. We kind of took that idea and switched it up a little bit with Yedo 9 or Yedo 5, right? Where we do our strike and pull through. The idea of that is it's very easy to have repetitions, right? So instead of 5 or 9, where you're just like, nyar, nyar, right? It's kind of a little bit more difficult to keep that going, as opposed to 5. I can just keep on going, right? So what's the benefit of Yedo 9's clear then? A note that I believe it was Master Bergman who mentioned this to me is that it's not just a clear. The idea is it's 2 cuts. So the idea is I'm cutting up this way. I'm aiming for the underside of someone's neck and I'm drawing it through here, going for someone's knee, right? So it's almost like a neck cut, knee cut. That may have also been Master Paul, so sorry if one of you is watching is like, I'm the one who taught you that. No, I don't sound like that, by the way, but yeah. So the idea, right, so you're getting that distance, right? You're going to get that translational power, right? You're here, you're going to aim for that neck, draw through, again, using the twist, really draw through with that diving cut. This is vaguely similar in certain ways to the clear in Yedo 3, right? So we have a lot of those ideas swimming around. So it's just taking the idea that we've used, again, something we've seen many times before, and just using it to be a little more offensive, right? So just like what we did in Yedo 5, which is more offensive, but not so lethal per se, versus this one would be, right? So if I strike someone underneath the jaw and really use my body motion to really drag it down, that's gonna be a little more lethal, and I'm gaining distance, so it's a win-win. The second aspect that I would like to talk about is more of a concept as opposed to a move, although it is also a move. It's also a move that we've seen a lot of in the past, and that's gonna be using the flourishes. Now, because this is a longer form, we can use similar flourishes and be able to do different things after it, right? So that might sound a little bit vague, right? So for example, in the beginning of the form, right? So we're gonna start off with our left hand, right? Here, we're gonna flourish again side to side. So it could be literally blocking, as interpretation can do with before the double thrust. But the idea here is I can just kind of like use this, kind of like make you track my motion. So I'm here and I'm going back and now overhead, right? Okay, So now the opponent's probably like, all right, so whenever I see this, expect a downward thrust. What happens next? Here. So flourish underneath, right? That was like about halfway through the form. And you're gonna notice like every time it does something a little bit different, right? So using again the flourish should be like, oh, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna stab you here. What am I gonna, I'm gonna stab you up here, right? That's gonna be something similar-ish, right? To what you're gonna be doing in Bangkok 7. Where you do a lot of the flourishes and stabbing, although you're very consistent with the direction you're stabbing. But the idea of like a flourish, just getting into someone's face and then again, being able to dispatch them in different ways. And the third technique I would like to play with is our one-handed Chiase. Now that might sound a little bit strange because you're going through your form like, one-handed Chiase, what's going on? So Chiase is this low guard, right? So you might think, oh, one-handed, right? This is exceedingly weak, right? If I'm fighting you this way, now you can. In fact, Musashi famously liked to fight just this way, right? Which is why I like to try to spar that way, although I'm very not good at it yet. This is not strong, right? The reason it was okay was that left hand, right? The left hand is letting you, walk into it to get that really powerful upper block. Or again, walk into it, kind of roll into a diagonal cut. Just one-handed is not as strong. Versus here, right? So this, again, Chiase is again a low guard. This is our one-handed Chiase. Now what do we do from this? Right, so we kind of bring it up sort of like a flourish. You may not necessarily think of it as a flourish. It probably isn't block, knee strike, block, knee strike, right? The idea probably is you're just simply going around the head, being somewhat repetitious because you're gonna break that rhythm with that cross cut, right? But the idea is just here and just kind of like knee crack, knee crack, knee crack, kind of just having it as a cover. But again, using this one-handed Chiase is new, right? We've never used it in this particular way. So whether it's new for newness sake or it's new because, again, it fits the mold, let's take a look. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice that's probably not going to be the first one. It's not going to be for newness's sake, right? So in general, we don't do that as we progress higher in forms. So first of all, again, to keep nailing that hammer in the head. That's not the right, whatever it is. Whatever that metaphor is, the idea of it being a one-handed style, right? So here, again, if you use this with a dao or with a one-hand sword, again, or just with your mukam, jingam, whatever you want to do with one-handed, this is very comfortable, right? And again, this makes sense, right? So you're just kind of covering and using your deep shoulder to keep cutting, right? Now, obviously, if you want to kind of if you individually want to do something different with this, a combination that I learned from a HEMA group, again, in LART in Reading, Pennsylvania. So if you want to do is what they call the sailor combination. So it's the same kind of thing. You're here, cut, but also come up this way, cut, up, this way, this way. So you're kind of getting used to both sides of it. But the point in the form is not necessarily to make you good at fighting in this guard. It was also to, so first of all, introduce it, but also show a different concept of just breaking that rhythm, which we've talked about in the past, right? So if I'm here, and I'm just trying to get at you, this is very similar to what we do in the beginning of Shimson, right? We just kind of do this quite a few times, not that spinny, right? So the idea here is I'm just kind of keep striking you, and then I change it next strike, and I'm going to turn it into my half guard. Now we're going to talk about half swording probably in a different video. But yeah, so this introduces the guard to you. It doesn't really show you a lot of techniques from it, but it's introduced, and it's all the more fun for it because again, this makes sense. If I'm fighting you, right, I want to make sure I'm covered before again. So I want to actually do this first, cover, and I want to sneak in knee strike up. Knee strike up. So I'm always making sure I'm covered with my one-handed sword. So a lot of things were said in that one cut, but hopefully that made some sense. So unlike our previous video with Yedo 8, where I kind of philosophized a little bit more about the aspects, of kind of delving more into it, this one's gonna be a little bit more just like, oh, here's a new move, that's pretty cool. Here's a new move, that's also pretty cool. This is something that, again, we've done before, but with a twist. So with that, can we retcon? And again, yeah, right, so the idea of using your clear as an offensive force can still be used, right? So when we think about the clear in 9, which is the example I keep coming back to, so the way Master Kim, Headmaster Kim, right, does this, he doesn't simply just turn and cut, right? He leans back, so kind of like he uses his whole weight to get that distance back, using that back foot to draw back a little bit more, get it back, power cut through. So you can still use that initial arc of that cut to get a little bit more power, maybe even harm the opponent pretty severely with a nice, powerful, again, translated cut. So you can absolutely do that. You can do that obviously with the Yedo 5 clears. You can do that with the Yedo 3 clears, which is actually the idea behind them. So yeah, so you can absolutely use your clears to do damage. Likewise, even as early as Sangsu 1, where we think about this being a clear, you can also dispatch and then get back and kind of just watch them bleed out, I guess, because it's not an instant kind of kill. So you're just kind of there like, ooh, sorry, and just going with that strike. So there's all that fun stuff that we can retcon. Have we used flourishes in the past? Potentially. Right, so I'm thinking about in 7, so Yedo 7, right, where we do again the same motion and then punch or whatever that might be, right? So we talked about that. So we have a flourish, low stab. You can also maybe think of this as a flourish as well. We're coming up, down, and then coming with that thrust. In the form, it's going to be landing into a yoke sose, right? So, well, not yoke sose, bun, right? And then you're going to go in for that knee strike. So that this could be also a flourish, right? So you can again look at individual pieces of potentially fluffy aspects of the previous forms and be like, oh, is that a flourish? Is that meant to merely disorient the person as opposed to me blocking individually? Maybe like in the beginning of Yedo 5, right? Is it, I am blocking you, I am blocking you, I am stabbing you under the jaw with my unicorn stab. That seems really unlikely, right? Versus flourish, haha, you didn't see that coming, right? So that's a lot more likely. So just think about those would-be dubious blocks and see if we can turn them into mere flourishes. Maybe not mere, but turn them into flourishes so we can get the next move in more likely. Now the one-handed Chiase was introduced in this form. Again, the idea of it goes back pretty far, right? We even have, this guard, the two-hand version of it in our basics, right? We don't really quite see it until Sangsu 7. But again, the idea of using the one hand, right? So the one-hand version of a guard being slightly different than a two-hand version also is pretty common. So for example, normal Kenjok. If you want to think of it this way, it's a little bit of a stretch, but if you want to do, so normal Kenjok, one-handed is here, just like we do in the beginning of this form, right? So there's going to be a little bit of altercation between, again, the two-handed version of a guard and the one-handed. Some not so much, right? So the one-hand Pao Sensei, like we saw in Yedo 7, is going to be very similar, it's just not here, but it's going to be similar nonetheless. So I know this one's probably going to be shorter than our previous one, but we introduced a lot of new interesting concepts, right? So digest it, right? So take all those concepts, muddy them around, kind of like see what works in the grand scale of Yedo, and see again if those aspects that you found in Yedo also work with Sangsu, and if they also work with, again, Bangkok or Genbaek or whatever happens after Genbaek, right? So again, take these ideas, expand upon them, think about them, see if there are any red flags that you think I blatantly ignored, and let me know. So with that, so make sure you keep training, stay safe, and stay humble. Haidong!